Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Team FeVR official podcast, which we named FeVR Dreams. I'm your host. I'm your host, Corbin78, also known as Corbin, and I'm joined today by Krayn _, also known as Krayn. Hello, Krayn. And
Hello.
Cypher Orion, also known as Onion. Greetings.
How are you the morning or
How
this
are you doing,
afternoon, or
guys?
whatever time of day it is?
Oh yeah, different time zones and thus different issues we have. We are talking here about VR, all the VR things, and we just came up with two major topics we want to talk about today. And one of that is what's going on in the VR industry today, which includes the headsets that are available and games and our personal opinions and experiences with that. So I think we get started with that, and later we talk a little bit about our personal experiences with streaming VR and mixed reality, and maybe even our setups, and give a little insight about that, because it's tricky. We all have different experiences and setups, so that might be interesting to hear. Let's get started with the things that are available for us to make this all happen. So for example, I know everybody has different headsets. For example, I go with the Valve Index, which I have to use more or less because I'm the Linux guy, and officially supported on Linux is only the Valve Index and the HTC Vive, even though the HTC Vive isn't that officially supported. If you have any issues with the HTC Vive on Linux, they want to make you a Windows report before you can get any official support. So I think the only way for me to go with the Valve Index, and I have to admit that's one of the best VR headsets I've ever seen so far. I tried the Oculus, the first ones, and the HTC Vive, and the Index is so much better. But of course there are different headsets available as well. So, Krayn, which headset are you using?
Index is kind of a 1.5 generation thing, isn't it?
Yeah, true. Well, I'm using the CV1 since it was cheap, basically. Yeah, exactly that what Onion is showing. So it's kind of was cheap, available at the time. It has good tracking and it still works great. Besides the controllers breaking every now and then, but I have warranty.
Still?
And
you're still under warranty. That's impressive.
I bought new controllers last year in, what was it, November? So I still have 2 years now, so I intend to use it very heavily.
Yeah, it's important to get the extra controllers. Just in case your thumbsticks break or anything like that.
Yeah, also the advantage of those controllers is you can exchange the batteries if they are running low, right?
It's the biggest advantage.
Yeah, okay.
Also a negative though, since if you play Beat Saber and you move very fast, there's that famous battery disconnects happening. So
yeah, but
controllers will just stop mid movement, which is not great, but it's what it is, and there's ways around it.
It seems like the engineers didn't understand that centripetal force pushes in the direction of the force. So the spring being at the top, when you're swinging it like this, it compresses the spring.
Yeah,
so really they could fix that by putting the spring on the bottom, but
we just need to keep in mind that not everybody will be able to see it if listening to a podcast, so we need to explain how this is with words as well.
Right. So the
battery compartment, it's upside down kind of. Should be the other way around and it would be better. But if I remember correctly, Krayn, you also found something that would at least the battery disconnects on heavy swings would mitigate that issue when you opened the thing?
Actually did. Wait, I can maybe get it real quick.
Okay, in the meantime, we can maybe talk about the headset that you are using, Cypher.
I'm using the same one that Krayn is.
Okay, also
Oculus CV1.
Okay.
I think one of the benefits of it also is that you can do up to 4 sensors on it. It comes with 2 of them, so you get decent tracking, and it's meant to be straightforward. So like if you set up the sensors in front of your PC, facing back toward your seat, but you can also add a 3rd or 4th sensor to get complete 360-degree tracking. So it really helps if you mount them up high on the ceiling. and that gives you a lot more range also. So if you have a large play space and you're swinging behind your back a lot, or you're turning around a lot, depending on what game you're playing, it's really beneficial for increased tracking accuracy.
Okay, that's interesting
Also
because
positioning the
the lighthouse tracking is doing a different approach, because there you put on the 2 lighthouse base stations on opposite sides of your room, and then they get more or less the complete tracking of that area. So having the Oculus tracker, and they are meant to be in front of you, that's a different approach then. That's interesting.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, Krayn, you got your controllers?
The battery thing. Yeah, back to the battery thing. What I've done on my left controller, since this one is my original controller from 2016 still, it works great, but it has no warranty, so I had no problem with modifying it. And what I did is I soldered extra capacitors and parallel to the battery, so whenever it disconnects now, the capacitors will discharge for a while and bridge the disconnect basically. So when it reconnects, the capacitors will recharge, and I will get the
really
disconnect.
Neat.
What kind of capacitor? Yeah. Specifically, which capacitor are you using? Not like brand, but like what's the or capacitance on it, and like
I have
which one
to
are you
admit,
using?
I have no idea.
Okay, guys, I want those specs because I need to do that to mine.
Is there like a manual or so you can find online if somebody wants to do that on his own?
When I intended to make more information public about that mod once I'm certain about what to use, basically. But I tried this because, as many might know, I have a lot of problems with my right controller breaking.
Yeah, we all know you are Oculus' most favorite kind of customer.
Yeah, so is my camera dead? I think my camera is dead. Anyways, no one knows. I'm hiding.
This is fair.
Yeah, your image is frozen, but no worries. This is a podcast. At least it's meant to be a podcast, so.
Yeah. But what I was saying is, when I was trying to fix my broken controllers, I found that the PCB behind the battery tray on the Oculus actually has spots for capacitors. In the design of the controller, they have spots for capacitors, but they didn't like pay the 5 cents per capacitor to put them in.
Well, so design decision.
The whole issue could be avoided by just soldering in those capacitors, and that gave me the idea to just try it and solder some in myself.
Yeah, well, it is how it is. I mean, it was a design decision by Oculus, and it's now out. But it's good to know that there's a workaround if you have that.
You can open the controller
the PCB does have it
yourself.
Yeah, but that's a good idea to make that information public available.
Really dropped the ball on that, because I mean, so they had two potential fixes for that engineering mistake. Not just one, but 2.
Yeah.
Oh, what? It is how it is.
They could have turned around the battery or put in capacitors.
Right.
Both of them would make it perfect, basically. But
let's have a look at the knuckles. You remember the release version of those with the analog thumb and not registering the press anymore when tilted? That wasn't there with the first versions, and that got introduced, so to speak, with the release. And people were complaining about that because they didn't feel the click anymore. So if you tilt the analog stick and press it, normally you would feel a click, and that is not feelable anymore. But it looks like also that got fixed in later revisions of the controllers. So I mean, VR is still new, right? There will be more issues. There will be more issues in the future, I'm sure. But as long as it kind of works and you find workarounds for that, I think it's okay. Hopefully they learn from those issues and listen to the reports and get that fixed in the next revision. So yeah, but especially
But they didn't. If you look at the Rift S, for example,
I have no idea about the Rift S.
In the same direction. Only the controller. Like, the spring is set up in the same way, so if you move too fast, you will push the spring in and disconnect the battery still. So, did they learn?
At least not in that revision, but maybe in the future. Who knows? Yeah, but let's stay with the controllers. So when playing, there are two things that are interesting about controllers. So when playing, for example, Beat Saber, there are different controllers. We have, I would say, more or less like 3 or 4 type of controllers that are the major type of controllers. These are the Oculus controllers, which are kind of short with the ring around them. Then you have the Vive Vans, which are more or less like a stick. You have these, which are similar to the Oculus, I think, the Windows Mixed Reality controllers. I think they are pretty similar, right?
They have, yeah, they have it like an inverted ring on them from how the Vive controllers are.
And then there are the Knuckles.
Yeah.
So I know, Krayn, you played different controllers, especially in Beat Saber. You've tried them all, so I guess
I didn't try Windows Mixed Reality, but yeah, let's not talk about those.
Well, I tried them with my sister has a Windows Mixed Reality headset, and well, it does work. Windows Mixed Reality has its own issues with the inside-out tracking. So if you're swinging behind your back, the cameras of the headset cannot track the controllers anymore because they are out of line of sight. So that's a design issue of those inside-out tracking devices.
Which is really interesting because the Oculus Quest handles that quite well. I've seen some other streamers that use the Oculus Quest, and you can do behind the back type stuff, and it continues tracking. Obviously, it's not tracking it with the cameras, but the IMUs, the internal motion units that are built into them, and they do some prediction algorithm or something that actually keeps them nearly pinpoint accurate. It's really impressive.
Okay, so yeah, that I didn't know. I just know from the Windows Mixed Reality headset and in particular the Lenovo Explorer that is, that the tracking is having issues if you're swinging behind your back a lot. So that's, I think, the disadvantage of the inside-out tracking. The advantage of that is, of course, it's very affordable. So
no sensors doing you a disservice by disconnecting or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but either way,
that's important. Sorry, I think it's important to know also the difference between the two major tracking technologies also, because with the Oculus CV1, you've got camera-based solution, but with all of the Lighthouse tracking, like the Vive and the Index, you've got essentially a strobe light that's blasting infrared light into the room, and then the sensors on the actual devices are using that light to triangulate positions.
Yeah. That makes your infrared remote control for your television not working anymore, just so you know. Because if somebody else is in the room and wants, while you are doing your workout in Beat Saber, wants to look at the television and switch channels, it might not work. So that's the only disadvantage.
They have to do their workout too and actually move to the television to switch channels.
Oh, yeah, but that's not what remotes are meant for, you know? I mean, hello, it's a remote.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, but so from my experience, I started playing Beat Saber with the Vive Vans, and that was tricky because the center of mass is not in the center of the stick. So because it has a ring on top of the Vive Vans, the center of mass is a little bit outside of the middle of the device itself. And when you then hold them as they are meant to be held, with your finger at the trigger and the ring pointing in front of you, and then you try swinging with that, it totally could happen. And that's why they have these safety straps, that you lose your Vive Band while you are swinging too hard and lose the grip and throw it away. So they were pretty soon solutions for that with different grips, like the X grip or the B grip, where you put fingers around the ring and hold them differently. But from what I've seen, people are more or less holding the Oculus controllers like they are meant to be held. There are no
There's different versions too.
There's definitely different grips.
There are more subtle differences, basically. So it's not like you hold it completely like in the ring at the top or so, like with the Vive, but you just just move your hand slightly so you can hook into different things. Maybe Onion can demonstrate. I don't know.
I'm looking up a link right now.
Oh, there was one.
There's-
Yeah, indeed, there was one on the Beat Saber wiki. There have been some different grips, but I looked only for the Vive grips so far. But
There you go.
I think
Link it in the
still
podcast
that
chat.
I think that still the base grip is still around the normal grip you have there, right? So you don't hold it
Well, I
too much differently.
I pioneered the WG grip, which is short for Weird German, since I invented it. Where you basically go not from hold it normally, but go with your hand through the tracking ring on the Oculus controllers and then grip the handle. So
Okay.
that way you turn
So
that
backwards, like this?
Yes,
Huh.
that's exactly how I
Oh,
used to
okay.
grip them for quite a while. That
Oh.
also ties into Red Corsa's question about different grips with the battery. That completely mitigates the battery fail on the design, since it turns the battery around, so you no longer push the battery into the spring, but away from the spring, so it won't disconnect anymore. It has other flaws, since if you sweat during Beat Saber, you now have contact with the tracking ring all the time with your wrist, and tiny amounts of sweat will slowly get into the tracking ring and destroy the solder joints and the
Okay.
traces on the PCB. So I think that's one of the reasons why so many of my controllers died too. But
No.
I stopped testing that, so I can't say for certain. But yeah.
Oh well,
There are different grips still.
I
and-
heard from like Whipstick that he was turning in controllers quite often as well, and looks like sweat got in the knuckles as well. So
Okay.
Ooh, that
I don't know
seems
if
like a little bit of a
he
design
turned
flaw.
them in because of he clapped them too much, but at least somebody said they opened the knuckles and it's the same issue with the PCB getting attacked by the sweat that is getting in there. So I'm lucky so far. I have still my first knuckles. They are still working. I clapped them a lot. I bonked them a lot. So my headset still works and my controller still works. So I'm at least lucky so far. I hope that if anything is there, that Valve will be helpful enough to get them replaced without without me buying new ones or so. But I will have to see.
Warranty though.
Yeah, if you're on
If you're out of
warranty, it's no issue.
with the Oculus controllers, you can quite easily open them up and then use conformal coating you use for PCBs to basically coat them. And then I done that to my very old one, which also has a capacitor mod. And I've used that one with the WG grip a lot, and it never failed since the LEDs were coated. So if you do that, you can use that grip without worry, I guess.
So I'm never going to be able to hear someone say WG grip without thinking you say we're German.
That will become a meme now. Yeah, right on. So, I mean, so far the things that at least I could get my hands on is the Vive bands and the knuckles, and also for the knuckles with the standard grip, it mostly, at least in Beat Saber, doesn't work well. If you don't alter the saber angle and stuff, I mean, that would be a thing with the other grips as well. But there, people were not really. Mods have been popular ever since in Beat Saber. But Saber Tailor, or even the option to have different controller settings in game, that was added later. So people were playing with the standard settings and were forced to use different grips to get around those issues. But nowadays, you have those mods, you can alter the angles and the positions. And yeah, for the knuckles, at least for me, it was more or less a necessity to change position and angle to make it work for me. And I have the impression that's more or less the case for everybody who's playing at least Beat Saber with the Vive Index controllers.
I didn't really have a problem. Like, I don't have an index, but I tested them extensively at my brother's place. And at first, I didn't try any saber tailor either, and I felt they were like a tiny bit off, but it's not that terrible as people make it out to be. At least it was my opinion, and but still, I changed the saber tailor and found a good one quite easily as well. So
I think I'm referring
it,
to
it,
if you
it
are holding the controllers and pull the straps that the knuckles have tight.
yeah,
If
I did
you
that.
if you have them loose, I think it's different because then you can grab around them and do different grips like you would do with the CV1 controllers or the Vive Vans. But if you hold them like they are meant to be held with the straps tight, I think you barely are able to play Beat Saber.
I was able to play Beat Saber, but I changed the angle, so
Yeah, as I said, if you're not changing anything. So that's different for other games, though. For example, I mean, that's only in Beat Saber where I was forced to change the angles. In all other games I played so far, and that is Tower Tag, Synth Riders, Pistol Whip, O-Shape, or Synth Riders. Did I say Synth Riders twice now?
you did, yes.
Okay.
It's fine.
Then I'm missing another game.
Getting that over like
Half-Life
Synth
Alyx.
Riders.
Half-Life Alyx.
Well,
there.
Half-Life Alyx was made for those controllers.
Oh, okay, yeah,
obviously,
that's not a surprise. So
course.
far it was only Beat Saber where I had to change the angles. All other games work pretty well without doing that, but that's just how it is, I'd say. That's not an issue
There is a
or
little
that's
bit
no
of an
complaint.
It's a bit of an interesting quirk with Oculus and Steam VR when you're using them in combination. Some games actually change the angle that the hand is at
Ooh.
on
Oh,
the
yeah,
controller.
those are weird.
Yeah, it's very strange because I think it's defaulted for the Vive ones. So you would have kind of a forward grip, and your wrist would be moved forward further, and because the Oculus controller is so much more of a natural grip, your wrist isn't like tilted forward to get the same motion with it. And so you get this weird like 5-degree discrepancy between
Yeah.
you know your wrist being straight forward or it being kind of cocked to the side a little bit.
Yeah,
And
I
so
get
the
that.
hands don't quite match up in some games.
I think
But that's only when you're using Oculus Home in combination with Steam VR.
okay. I think that's the issue with a lot of games. They have more or less to implement a special setting for each type of controller to make it feel like the controllers are meant to be held. So, for
Very
example,
Also, in Beat Saber, it's not the same for all the controllers, since it's not just like Steam VR. Beat Saber has separate settings for the controllers. If you look at the claw mod, for example, I know that Rue had to implement special orientations for every type of controller. So the aim is to have the Wolverine claws come out of your hands, and he had to do it specifically for all the controllers, so they align well in game then. So
yeah, just to give context here, who Rue is. He is working for Liv, and he's also the inventor of the Claw mod, which is a special type of playing Beat Saber with shortened sabers. So, like Wolverine would have his claws.
30%.
And that makes the game a little bit more of a workout because you have to move more to reach the blocks. And it's
very intense.
It's much fun, but also
Yep.
very
The saber length is
sweat-provoking.
actually the saber length is actually shortened to I believe it's 1/3 of
Yeah.
a meter instead of the default 1 meter sabers. So you not only have to adjust how your arm movements are, but you have to move your whole body in order to hit all of the blocks at default scale. Like because you can scale the note grid
Yeah,
with
and
your height a little bit, but
they also changed
Fixing-
they have implemented something like controller settings or saber-tailored settings, especially for the claw grip, because it also changes the angle and the position a little bit of the sabers. So it would feel like the claws would come out of the back of your hand, like Wolverine has his claws.
Yeah.
So that's
And
already implemented.
Yeah, you definitely have to think about the sabers way differently than you would on default. And I apologize, I misspoke. It doesn't actually scale the note grid; it just moves it up and down.
Oh, okay.
6-lane maps are quite interesting with that mod.
Oh, yeah, they're brutal. Especially some of the maps that are more like stream oriented, where you're doing a lot of up and down motions with both hands, alternating. Ooh, it's kind of like it's like rowing a hand bike almost
Oh dear. But I
when
have
you
to
have that
admit,
hand crank in the front.
as I'm playing with the knuckles, I have altered the angle and the position of the sabers already to make it work for me. So for me, it's like the saber would come out of my index finger or something like that. But that's pretty similar to the claws. And I was able to just adjust my settings a little bit more with the settings of the claw settings. And that made my normal grip that I use even a little bit better now. So that's pretty cool. But they were pretty similar from the beginning. So when I started to play with claws, I realized, hey, that's how I have my sabers anyways. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Beat Saber modding's kind of interesting altogether too. Like it's weird how violent, if you think about it this way, how violent the modding actually is. It's like taking a vampire tap into the game itself. So
Yeah,
you've got
from what I
the
learned is you are injecting into the engine and can do anything you want. It's like you
yes,
have full control over the engine then.
yes. So when you go to mod it, they use this tool called the Illusion plugin architecture. And fun factoid, this came from hacking hentai games. Apparently. So we have the hentai community to thank for for all of the Beat Saber modding that everyone can do.
Thank
So
you so much. Otherwise, Beat
thanks
Saber,
for
I
that,
guess,
you
wouldn't be where it is now.
goofy degenerates. I'm just kidding, just kidding. But yeah, so you can take the IPA architecture in addition to another library called Harmony. And Harmony is, I would say, even more violent than IPA, simply because it can just take a DLL while it's running, as long as you've got the injection method working, and then it can rip out whole functions and completely replace them. It can prepend and postpend those functions so that, like, well, for example, I have a mod called audio modifiers, and it changes how the game plays sounds. So instead of just the hit sound when you slash the block, it picks a random sound. And I've got a bunch of code that'll, pick the sound for you and load them all in. But um, with the way that Harmony library works, it's taking the exact function that it normally uses to check the block hits, and I'm just replacing some code in it and then shoving it back into the game. That's basically how that works. It's
Hacking at
like I
its
said,
finest.
violent.
Hacking at its finest. But that's pretty interesting. How do you know what functions are there that you can replace? Is there a way to get insight? I mean, through the modding, is there a way to get insight on which functions are there?
Yes, there's. It depends on how the game itself has been compiled. There's two primary methods if you're using Unity. You've got IL2CPP, which will take C# code and compile it to native C++ code, which is way less readable. So that's what they use to deploy um, Quest games, Oculus Quest games, and games like Pistol Whip, for example, also compile that way on PC. So they're way less moddable. It's a lot more difficult to actually modify the code that you want to modify. But Beat Saber, because it's compiled natively with, I believe it's Mono, or not Mono, but the .NET architecture, which Mono covers on Linux, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can open up the DLLs because they're not what's called obfuscated. They don't scramble the names of everything. They don't try to make any attempt to hide the code inside that dynamic library. And there's a tool. Should I say the name of the tool? I'm not certain, because it is technically kind of sort of in violation of the terms of service of the game to
Ooh,
open up DLLs and things like that.
ooh.
So um, Yeah, we'll just say there's a tool out there that's freely available that lets you open up the dynamic library and actually look at the code in the game.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily exactly as the code was written because it'll replace names of things if it doesn't actually know the name of a variable or something. It'll just say variable 1, variable 2, variable
Yeah. Okay.
3.
Yeah.
But for the most part, if you're familiar with Unity, you can probably navigate mostly how whatever game it is you're opening up works, and then find the pieces that you need to replace or alter, or whatever it is that you need to do to them in order to get things to work the way that you want them to.
But that's pretty cool. So that's a mutual thing, I would say. So on the one hand, they didn't scramble the code.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't scramble this code, which makes it moddable. So that's the benefit they get from the modding community, even though I think modding is, of course, a thing some game designers
it seems to
don't
be
like to see. But on the other hand, it
yeah.
makes it popular. So the community is giving something back because it helps spreading the word. I mean, if you see, hey, I can do these cool things here, then it's more attractive even. And from what we've seen, if there was a good idea for a mod, that got integrated into the game, which is another benefit. So it's a win-win situation for both, I'd say.
I agree. Like with Beat Saber's popularity, in specifically Beat Saber, after we saw the game come out, it had a great original soundtrack to it. Some of the maps were, I mean, it was a brand new game, so maybe they didn't quite know exactly how the mapping should be. But since then, people have figured out what they like and what they enjoy. Um, and the first thing people did was crack open the code and make their own scoring system, make their own meta game basically out of the base of this game. So when most people are playing Beat Saber and they look up Beat Saber modding group and Score Saber and all of those, you have this dedicated group of individuals who's basically doing their own thing with the game, which has propelled their sales and everything in the game as a result of it. So really, it was hands off for Beat Games as far as how quickly they blew up because they didn't have any reservations about people hacking their game and altering it just a little bit.
Yeah.
Like they didn't go after people legally because they were like, well, this is actually a good thing for our game, so we're just gonna kind of hang out and see what happens.
Even though with the legal things, it's tricky because at least
It
in
is.
other areas, it is if they don't do anything, after a while it gets accepted and you cannot do anything about it anymore. I mean,
Right.
that's mostly for name reservations or something. At least that's where I heard it outside of the gaming industry. But I think in the gaming industry, it's probably similar. So I don't know if they will have to do it because otherwise they might lose some rights or so. So just to retain the rights, and that's totally legit that they want to retain the rights of their game.
Mhm.
So maybe they have to do it at some point, but that's just.
I
We
do
will
want to
see.
mention, but I'm not a lawyer, and I don't think either of these two guys are. So
No,
we're just
no.
kind of going off
Yeah,
of our
that's
own
just what we
individual
heard.
knowledge.
That's just what we heard and what we experienced so far. But of course, we are not lawyers. Well, we are
Yes.
talking about opinions here. This is a podcast, and podcast is about opinions and experiences. So, yeah. Yeah, we are not lawyers. Disclosure.
Indeed, disclosure. It's important.
Mhm.
Like hashtag sponsored, Mod Mike.
Yeah. So, for
Yes.
example, Cypher and I am talking via the mod mic, and you can listen to the perfect audio.
The creamy goodness of all of our voices run through the deliciousness that is Mod Mike.
Oh, dear.
Thanks, Mod Mike.
Thank you a lot. Yeah, right on. Let's talk about more VR games. Now we have dug into Beat Saber a lot, but there are more games out there, and they are pretty.
I think the
Popular.
first one we should mention here is because of the modding thing is Synth Riders.
Yeah, that would
There
be
they
totally
had
the next
modding.
thing.
They had modding, and they saw what mods are great and get used. For example, the whole Twitch integration. I don't know who made it in the first place, but they integrated it into the base game. They are quite active in seeing good stuff and then just
I pushed them very hard to add native modding support, actually, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that they listened because it really helped a lot. They're at a point right now, I believe, where they're revising their modding API. So they're, um, as far as I know, revising the whole thing. So they had modding in the game. They've since removed it, but I believe that they're trying to put together some better facilities for people to mod into the game, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but
So there's
side,
not the same possibility we have with Beat Saber to use that IPA thing to mod
I,
Synth Riders?
I
Because
was
it's
about to I was
okay,
about to
sorry.
mention that actually. The way that they started off modding, I had suggested that they use some of the available libraries on the Unity Asset Store because people had created these libraries to facilitate native modding support. Um, Part of the difficulty of that is this weird memory boundary because of how that particular type of modding is loaded in, where you basically have to store all of your variables in this one big master class. And that's really cumbersome when you're trying to do really interesting and innovative things. Like it's just kind of constricting. Now, with IPA and the way IPA works, it is possible to mod synth riders the exact same way that Beat Saber is. That's
Okay.
all I'm going.
Okay. I mean,
So
the
spin mod when?
community integration, etc. They are interacting with the community. That's awesome. So, for example, for example, as I'm streaming from Linux and that has totally its own issues, I'm lucky to have modding into Beat Saber because there I can leverage the Camera Plus to at least simulate mixed reality, even though it's not complete the same as Liv can do with the compositing. So the disadvantage I have is that my controllers will always be behind me from the perspective of the camera. No matter which how I turn around, it will always be on the other side. And with Liv and the compositing, they know the position of your person and can
Mm.
display the sabers between you and the camera. That's of course looking way more awesome. But as you're facing mostly off the camera to the other side, it's not that bad. And
I was about to say that.
yeah, it's there. It doesn't really it's not that visible. So the impression is real, and if you don't know it, even I think you wouldn't realize. But in Synthrise, it's a little bit different. There is not this kind of modding available right now. They still have a third-person camera, which I was able to at least adjust so it kind of works. It's not perfect, and they even
Tiny con.
started to integrate custom camera, which might help in the future. It's not perfect yet because I cannot use it because it's moving with me, and that got just recently added. And that's also because of they were listening to the community. And in that specific case, even listening to me when I was asking about a freely configurable third-person camera. And that was pretty cool. I mean, having these type of interaction with developers, that's the best thing for both,
That's
for the
very,
community
very
and the game
important.
developers. That's so cool. So the Synth
Mm.
Riders developers are awesome.
I agree. I agree. They're really excuse me, really hardworking, and they listen. They really listen to their community. I mean, quick side note: if you play Synth Riders and you want to have some feedback with the future of the game, they're always taking feedback. And if you get into their, I don't know if it's a beta program or if it's by invite or exactly what, but they have this very focused group of people who are enthusiastic about the game, like super enthusiasts that are like voting on details, like some of the scoring system changes and like the new 360 mode that came out. That was a lot of internal testing done by that group of people. So if you're interested in that game and you're interested in being a part of a game without having to work for them or you only have a little bit of time, that's a really great way to go about contacting developers in general if they're willing to you know take that kind of feedback, but synth writers specifically.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I mean, it's also a rhythm-based game, and those are pretty popular among us here in general. So
Get you up, get you moving, makes you dance.
yeah, the
That's
soundtrack, if
what
that's
dancing.
hooking you
Yes.
up. Okay,
We
there are
can
some
disprove
people.
that, Krayn. Don't make us pull up the clip.
Yeah, but we also have some other games that are in that category, like Pistol Whip, for example, which is also an awesome game. So
More music focused.
yeah, also
Rhythm shooting games.
they also have their different. They are all different. There's none like the other. Synth Riders is different from Beat Saber, even though you with your controllers you are trying to hit something that's coming towards you, but it's different. In Beat Saber, you are slashing. In Synth Riders, you are holding your arms up all the time and do also quick movements, but it's more about accuracy to hit those spheres. And Pistol Whip is completely different in that regard. Yeah, but
I would
go
say
ahead.
Synth Riders is definitely more flowy than Beat Saber. I mean, Beat Saber is described as a rhythm slashing game. So you're slashing things to the rhythm, whereas Synth Riders, you're kind of
riding,
bopping orbs, and you're riding rails with your hands, where you just kind of have to keep your hands doing this. And then, of course, Pistol Whip is just a rhythm shooting game.
I have to say the best playstyle for Pistol Whip is still the pacifist mode, where you don't shoot back and only dodge bullets.
Oh, true. That's a workout. I was not able to beat any level yet.
It's very
pacifist.
I've only done like 3 of them on easy. It's really hard to do.
It's really hard. But they all get you hooked. If you are a little bit into music, and I have to admit, even though, of course, everybody likes to listen to music, but I never followed the charts or something like that, at least not in the recent years. But then VR came up with those type of games, and now, I don't know if this is the same for you, but when I listen to a song that I've played on Beat Saber and listen to that now on the radio or anywhere else, I'm getting into this rhythm and moving my arms like I would do in Beat Saber.
That's kind of dangerous too. I've hit my hand on my desk, just kind of idly, not even thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, ow! Just whack my hand on my desk while I'm playing along in my mind.
Also, I mean, that's now something that will change the image of PC gaming or gaming in general. Before it was, yeah, you're sitting lazy at your desk, not moving at all except your hands for operating mouse and keyboard. But now gaming is a workout. I mean, hello, that's what every gamer was dreaming about, and now we have that. That's so cool.
True. Although there are a lot of gamers that are more interested in getting a high score only, not necessarily getting a workout, as we see from a lot of the Beat Saber like higher end mapping, where
of course.
you just you got your arms off to the sides, basically you're just flailing your wrists as fast as you can, because if you move at all, you're gonna start like missing hits, or in Synth Riders, hyper focusing on where the center of those spheres is.
Did I hear hyper there?
Yes.
Oh, in Synth Riders there's just a song called Hyper. And that's something where I am trying to full combo that, and that's a tricky one. And yeah, well, if you are getting into those games, after a while, of course, you need some practice to get into that at all. And I remember when I was starting Beat Saber and getting into hard difficulty at the beginning, which was really hard for me, and then the jump to expert, that was a leap. It was a giant leap for me. And after a while, you get the practice, and now you from time to time you warm up with Expert Plus songs. So with the experience and with your getting better, you also feel that you like, hey, I can beat that with a better score, and I want to, because that's part of the fun. And there are, of course, some people who do it, push it to the limit and try to be the best. So there is, of course, some competition going on.
Frustrating though.
That's also part of the game.
I just want to be able to get a good score and dance at the same time. And Synth Riders has really made me start spinning around in my headset for whatever reason, the way that the game plays, just I can't help but spin around sometimes just to do fancy stuff because it's fun.
Yeah, I totally get that. So what are the other rhythm games we have? We didn't mention O-Shape yet. Have you played
O-Shape,
those?
yeah, O-Shape's great. O-Shape is if you haven't heard of O-Shape, it's basically a choreography game that forces you into different positions to get through holes in or person-shaped holes
Shapes.
in walls. Yeah, so O-Shape is uh it's definitely not Beat Saber, definitely not Synth Riders, definitely not Pistol Whip. It's something entirely unique.
Hmm.
And it it makes you move, I would say, more than everything except for Pistol Whip, because you have to fit your body into the holes in the walls that are coming at you to the music.
Yeah, there are different focus on your body for each game. So
Mm.
Pistol Whip is mostly for arms. Not for legs, sorry. I want to say Beat Saber is mostly for arms. O-Shape is arms and a little bit legs, because you have to move a little bit more, I guess. Even though
Yeah.
there are, of course, maps in each games which force you to move more than... But in general, I'd say Beat Saber arms, Synth Riders arms and a little bit more legs. Pistol Whip, mostly legs. And O-Shape is
Mostly
combining
legs.
that. I mean, in
Yeah, it
O-Shape,
really
you
is.
have to move your arms to fit into the shape, but you also have to crouch again and again to fit through that shape. Also, there are different shapes where you have to position your legs differently to make that work. So I think if you want to have a full body workout, O-Shape might be the route to go.
True. And I think once more and more people adopt the tracker solution to more full body type um hold on, brain tick 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 more involved gameplay where you have like foot trackers in addition to your hands with the controllers and your head with the headset. I mean, there's people out there that are using ridiculous tracking solutions like Nina Grimsdottir. She has a whole lot of different Vive trackers that are on her body that
What was it,
a lot.
11 now?
Yeah, I believe. Well, it's 11-point tracking, so
More or less
that's
for each
9.
for each junction that your body has, a single tracker.
Yeah, you got shoulders, elbows, wrists, hips, knees, and feet, and
Yeah, with
yeah,
that you
it's
can.
And
it's
they
very
have,
it's very expensive to do that. But just adding the feet to the situation to increase your immersion, I think we're gonna see a lot more of that in the future,
I
where
think
we're
I
not
even
just
talked.
involving the head and hands.
I even talked to the devs of O-Shape once, and like in my chat, and they were kind of open to the idea of implementing foot tracking, but they were also saying too low amount of people actually have it yet.
Yeah.
But that would be kind of interesting.
Yep.
So for me, it's I like to play all of them, but to get back that curve to streaming, as Live does support all of those games. So for Live users, that's not an issue. It's just for me, the special snowflake. So I'm sticking mostly with Synth Riders and Beat Saber because they have a third-person view that I can use for that, and that's missing at the moment for Pistol Whip and for O-Shape. Even though at least O-Shape devs said they are looking into third-person camera, and that would help me a lot. Pistol Whip, we'll have to see if that's possible. But both of those games, they all have, except Pistol Whip, I guess, the possibility to have custom songs already. And yeah, modding is difficult. It's easy in Beat Saber, but in the other games, I think the same is for O-Shape and Pistol Whip. The
Yes,
modding
so
there
Ship and
is,
Pistol Whip are both compiled with IL2
yeah.
CPP for quest compatibility
Okay.
and maintainability, because you have to completely switch the project over to compile in C# versus IL2 CPP.
Mm.
And so that takes a completely different compiling process.
Yeah, so that's something that I hope they will integrate into the game. And I think even because to show off VR games, because VR is something you can talk about a lot, but you cannot show it really. You only can, the best way to show VR games is in mixed reality. then the person is in the game, and that's shown. He's moving and acting in the game world. For pancake games, to talk about them and show photographs and pictures of that's easy. And there you can see the graphics and gameplay and stuff. But for VR, that's different. Because in the VR experience, that's something more or less you have to experience on your own. And the closest thing to carry on that experience is to show it in mixed reality. Showing a first-person thing, that doesn't transmit the message of that game at all, I think. Not at all,
Sure.
but it could be way better. So having the
Half-Life
possibility...
Alyx mod that made it flat.
Yeah, what I want to say is that I think that each game should have at least the possibility to show it in third person. And if you want to do it really professional, then use Live. Because with Live, with its built-in calibration, that's something that a lot of people can do. Not everybody. For example, my sister cannot use Live either, even though she's using Windows, but she has severe issues. So she's not using it. But I guess she would still like to have something like a third-person view. So she can transmit that at least a little bit. So it would be great if each game would integrate a third-person view for this purpose. And I think from what I've seen in Unity, that it's not too difficult to implement another camera.
No,
it's just
not at all.
The difficulty is just to make it accessible to the user so you can configure it. I think that's...
There's also additional considerations when you're adding in a third-person camera to games that are generally meant to be played first-person in a VR headset, because oftentimes you're not designing it with a character in mind, because you are the character.
Yeah.
Which is great for mixed reality, because then you literally become the character. But a lot of people use avatars, or they want to use the original characters in the game, and having a third-person camera built into the game. You also have different shaders that you need to consider. Things like if the camera's going to end up clipping a wall, you need to implement like a dissolve shader, so that the distance between you and the camera, you don't have things that are interceding between that space.
Yeah, but Synth Brothers, for example, has done that from the beginning, right? They have
Yes.
third-person camera with avatars.
Yep.
So something like that
something
in
like-
each game, that would be great.
Yeah, something like Half-Life Alyx, though, like they would need, something to...
Oh yeah.
Yeah, some
Half-Life Alyx.
additional considerations for that.
Yeah. So it depends
But
on the game, of course. Because
Going
in...
back to modding for a bit, there was a question for Onion from Red Cursor, and he asked if it's possible to implement Lua scripting in Beat Saber, because, like, for example, they have in Garry's mod, because it would be able to change plugins without restarting the games, and new versions won't break the plugins if they are in Lua. Basically, just the Lua support needs to be updated, I guess.
That's actually two questions. Yes, you could very easily implement Lua with your own functions, but when it comes to restarting Beat Saber, or not restarting Beat Saber and restarting mods and things, possible, but that would take an exceptional amount of work because of how the IPA modding system works and how each individual mod initializes itself within that modding system. So I'm not knowledgeable enough to tell you a definitive yes, it'd be easy, or no, it wouldn't. I'm pretty well certain it would just take quite a bit of time to figure out. But yeah, it's absolutely possible, because I mean, you could do literally anything you want to Beat Saber through the IPA modding system, in addition to Harmony. You could circumvent all the game systems and just use it as a launcher for your own game if you wanted to. I mean, that's not really sensible, but it's possible.
Yeah, is that answering the question of Red Cursor? Give us feedback on the channel. Yeah, so...
should we do like a QA portion toward the end here?
Yeah, get some more questions. The Red Cursor writes it's... that's... thank you there. Yeah, okay. I mean, we have talked now about headsets a little bit, controllers and games. Let's come to our personal VR setups a little bit. So, who wants to start? Onion?
As far as like my streaming setup and
Yeah.
how the mixed reality stuff works.
I mean, that's more or less that belongs together, I think.
Right, right. Well, let's see.
So
Well, we have a
especially
green
the
screen behind me,
yeah.
as you see, and of course the VR headset itself. Well, as you see, but if you're listening to the podcast, I suppose you're not seeing anything. I have a green screen behind me, and then the rest of the room is filled with lighting, just regular 5000K LED lights. I do have a soft box. That's a photography term, I guess. That has 4 lights in it to kind of diffuse light so that it's not creating super hard shadows on the background, which is important when you want to composite things in with Live. And Live is the software that all or most of us use to get ourselves into those VR games. I have currently a 2-sensor setup for my Oculus CV1. I would prefer a 4-sensor, but I've since been reduced to a much smaller play area. Um, hoping to be able to build. Well, the goal is actually hoping to build a streaming trailer. So like on the back of a vehicle with a box and all of everything that you need to stream in that, instead of having to use this tiny space, admittedly in my bedroom. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers what I'm doing. No, cameras. I actually have 5 cameras for the setup. One that provides my primary live view, a secondary one that's capable of showing me kind of from the front. Previously, I was using that as more of a front camera because I had 360-degree coverage with the green area, and then with streaming everything, the other cameras are like a face view. Like if you're watching the podcast with us right now, that's just my main. I'm staring at you, talking to you in chat, and then the other one is just kind of an effect camera for my starting soon screen and any other weird effects that I need to use in that.
Ah. I think lighting is a very crucial thing to streaming in general.
Yes.
Because
Well, mixed reality and green screening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So lighting is a
Obviously,
crucial thing.
if you're an
And
avatar, it doesn't matter.
yeah, good. But that's not really mixed reality, I'd say, huh? Avatars
It is
kind
It is
of, but it's
well,
not
I would
mixing
say it
reality
is-
in.
It's mixing two different realities.
Yeah,
The
I
mixed
would
reality is
our
mixing the real
reality.
reality with the virtual reality, and Avatar is more or less only the virtual reality.
but only because it's not visual. You're still mixing the reality of your movements with an avatar. So
Yeah,
I think
right.
I think technically it still is by that.
We
thought.
can agree on that. So, Krayn, what about your setup?
Well, mine is not as fancy as many cameras. I just have one camera. Like, I wish I could show it right now, but it's kind of out of view and my camera is still frozen. So
It does make it
like,
difficult.
Like if you behind me, there's a light. Like above that light is where my camera is located, and it's looking at the other side of the room where my green screen is, or would be. It's completely. I can take it down in 5 minutes. Basically, my green screen setup. So my room looks just normal if I don't stream, and it's completely green when I stream. And, well, not complete, but one side of it is green, and then I have a Sony A5000, which is not the perfect camera for mixed reality green content because it has text in the view on the HDMI, which I have to cut out manually. So it's if I hold up my hands, it would be kind of noticeable. But if you just cut them out, it's a perfectly good camera for what I do. And yeah, then I have an Oculus, as I said in the beginning as well. It's just as Onion. I though am on a 4-sensor setup with a special USB card that makes it possible even. So because the Oculus sensor are quite
Hungry
hungry with the USB bandwidth. So basically, if every sensor wants its own USB controller with the full 5 gigabits of bandwidth, which is stupid, but nothing I can do about that.
Hmm.
So I have actually one of the many people are recommending those StarTech USB cards that have 4 controllers on them, and I always dismiss that as that's just, why would I need that? And like, I think a month ago I actually thought I will buy that now and see if that will fix my tracking, and it did. So
Yeah,
if you guys
it's been amazing having that start. I also have one of those StarTech cards, and we're not sponsored by StarTech, at least I'm not, and I
Me
would
neither.
promote them endlessly just for this one card. If you have an Oculus CV1, it will definitely help with your tracking.
Yeah, it was really surprising because my mainboard already has 4 controllers, but just because there's other stuff connected to those, the tracking goes bad quite often. Having a dedicated controller for each sensor it's really night and day difference.
Oh, and the price
And
on them has come down too. They used to be 125, and now they're only 85 USD.
Oh,
buy yours now on.
So I
No.
put some link in
we are
chat.
not. Oh, great.
Yeah, like I said, not sponsored, but if you have a CV1 and you've got more than 2 sensors, definitely look into maybe investing in one of those because it will help your tracking a lot. Although CV1's kind of on its way out.
Maybe not. If you look at the high-ranked Beat Saber players, they are looking to buy CV1s and they want to switch to them because the controllers are apparently lighter. But I'm kind of curious to see how they will react to the tracking, the battery tracking and stuff. Like,
Yeah, it does take some modification to get
Yeah.
everything working right, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah, that's why we are explaining that here.
I try to do most of my stuff on the cheap, so I've only got like a cheap green screen from Amazon, like $30 for quite big of an area, and what I use for lighting is I'm not sure about your guys' region, but in Germany we have Aldi, and they have their special offers basically, and they at some point had LED panels that go from 2,700K to 6,000, I think.
Ooh.
And they have a good color reproduction value, or I factor, whatever.
Do you say?
And they have wireless LAN, so you can put a firmware on them, so you can use home automation to control them as well. So, and they're
Really?
quite cheap. They cost me $40 each, and they do good light. They diffuse the light, and it's a really on the cheap version to lighting your room.
I guess I'm going to Aldi.
Yeah, because I mean, we have a question from McCrainer here, McCramer in chat. Any tips for a budget mixed reality setup?
I started out on a very budget, like I had,
that might even answer some of the questions already, yeah.
Budget option, I was starting with a Logitech C920 camera, which is granted still in non-corona times, what was it, $60 or so?
No, even 50 or so, yeah.
Yeah, they're way more expensive. I'm also on a C920 at the moment.
Same here.
And it's a great camera for what it is. Mine lives on in the Thias streaming setup, so it done me quite a good service. It has 60 hertz on 720p, and
Indeed.
you can even if you go to 1080p and 30 FPS, it will not, like, if you stream in 60 FPS still, it's still looking fine. I kind of even liked it more than 720p, but
yeah, for a budget setup and the C920, I'm using a C922 even, but they're not that much difference.
Right, C922.
The biggest problem with the C920 is the driver, because it doesn't like to save its settings. You have to go find a special driver. So
that's
it will
not
actually
an issue on Linux, though.
Also, the field of view is not that. The main reason I switched cameras to a mirrorless camera is because I have control over the lens. I can put a lower focal length lens.
That's then not on the budget side anymore.
No. I'm just saying that's the only reason why I had to switch, because I'm not that. I don't have a big distance to the camera. It's just like 1.5 meters.
Yeah.
But if you can put your Corbin, you use the camera I was using, and you can fit into the full frame of it.
Well, I
So if you
changed.
just have like, yeah.
I changed my setup after a while when I was redoing all the calibration, and Atlantic Rebel wants to know how I do the setup on Linux, and we will come to that in a bit. But what's important about the webcams in general, and especially the C920, if you have one, is lighting there. You need to have a bright lighting so the camera doesn't have to compensate that, because if it tries to do that, it will start to lower the frame rate. And
For those that watch the video, Onion is demonstrating right now.
yeah, but that's that's not visible on stream. But you see, it starts trying to compensate the low lighting, and that's why it's getting laggy.
Really laggy as you add more and
And
more
as
light,
soon,
and then
as soon as the
frame rate
light is
goes
back.
up.
So for budget setup, keep in mind that you need good lighting. That's crucial there. Otherwise,
And
you can
you
totally
can
go for such a webcam. I mean, 60 FPS. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
60 FPS is also something you might want to go for. It depends on your streaming setup, and if you can do enough, if you have enough bandwidth for streaming in 60 FPS, the difference between 30 and 60 FPS is visible on stream. And if you can go for 60 FPS and have the lighting and have the camera that can do it, I'd say go for it. And a C920 or C922 totally can do that pretty good, pretty fine.
Absolutely. When I first started doing mixed reality streaming, I was actually on an AMD FX 8120 that was overclocked to about 4 gigahertz. And I had to overclock it because it got real laggy if I didn't. And that's a little bit more of an enthusiast knowledge thing that normal users wouldn't really want to explore. But that paired with a GTX 970. I forgot where I was going with that. I apologize.
No worries. Let me throw something in, because if you don't have a webcam yet, you can totally use your phone as one. That will work for setups as well. So I just discovered, and that's fairly new probably, because I was looking for a solution to stream in 1080p with 60 FPS before. And for me, as I'm a Linux user, there are difficulties. There is missing a codec thing for those cameras who can do 1080p and 60 FPS yet. It will come eventually, I'm sure, but not available right now. So I was looking for a solution to do that with my phone as a camera. And just last week, I discovered something that's called iReune. And there's an app for your phone that's available for iPhone as well as for Android. And there is the corresponding app on your desktop that is available for Windows, Mac, and Linux now. And with that, you can turn your phone into a wireless webcam. And I tried that for a bit, and the frame rates are great. If you have a 5 gigahertz wireless, that will totally work. And you can start with that. So you don't have to get one of those currently, due to the situation worldwide, buy a very expensive webcam. So that might be something
what I was going to say.
Keep in mind, it will drain your battery on your phone.
Of course, but
there's
solutions.
Same problem I have right now, and your stream freezes, and your phone needs to charge.
So that's for the budget side. But Onion, you found your thought again.
Yeah, I remember what I was going to say. So it was relevant that I was running on such old by today's standards hardware. Because when I was streaming in mixed reality, the only way that I could get that to work and still be able to play the game, and believe me, playing Beat Saber at 45 frames a second is not as much fun as it sounds like it is. I had to run my mixed reality setup at 720p 30 hertz because it just wouldn't composite fast enough at that point. But it's possible, and you can do it. And if you're willing to suffer just a little bit, you can achieve that. Well, technically, yes. I have the same PC that's been upgraded drastically.
No, I'm just thinking, like, the Live guys did so many performance improvements. I would kind of be interested to see if the same hardware could run a higher quality stream now, because Live got so much more performance. Like
Ye-
in the last
yeah.
few months of the Live updates, have you noticed like Beat Saber went from feeling a bit sluggish all the time to being really on point when you play still? So I could
Yeah, it
imagine
has
that
definitely
there's
improved.
more possible with your old setup. So it might be a hassle to set up again.
Yeah, I don't still have all of that hardware, no. But the actual physical PC still exists. It's just not all of the same parts anymore.
So right on, let's get to my part, how my setup is, and that will answer Atlantic Rebels' question then. As I probably said that already more than once, I'm using Linux to do all my stuff. And thanks to Valve and their awesome work together with Codeweavers, who are maintaining a software called Wine. And that's an abbreviation or a backronym, more or less, acronym, whatever, which is for Wine is not an emulator. That software is used to wrap system calls from Windows to the corresponding system calls on Linux. So you can run software that's written for Windows on Linux with that software. And Valve made it very, very easy to use that on Linux, which is called now Proton, and that's integrated into the Linux Steam client already. It's officially integrated, and there are some games that are whitelisted to be used with that, but you can untick that, or there's a checkbox where you can try to run all the games that are Windows only on Linux with that software. And if you check that box, it will make that button to install and hit play for those games, for all games. And Beat Saber is one of those games Valve whitelisted. And a whitelist means, in that case, that Valve will take care of upcoming issues. And there had been issues already, and I reported them, for example, and those got fixed with newer versions of Proton. So it is totally possible to play Beat Saber on Linux with official support, which is awesome. Modding support, of course, is something that's not officially supported, but it still works. And even the modders are very helpful to get things running on Linux as well, because they know there are people playing Beat Saber on Linux. And people were having issues and reaching out to the mod creators, and we got help, and that's pretty cool. So to get that set up, it's not that fancy as it might look. So you just install the game, you install the mods, you get all of that running. And the thing that I'm using to make that impression of a mixed reality setup is to use Camera Plus. You don't have to use mods though. There is, and that is very cool from the Beat Saber devs as well. Especially the dev, his Twitter handle is Split82. I was reaching out to him to check if they have, or if they would be interested in getting something like a third-person view into the game, and they said, we have that already. Surprise! You just have to enable it manually, and that's the thing you have to do on Linux more or less either way. You have to do things manually. Liv will help you on Windows a bunch. You just do the guided tutorial for the calibration and you are done. On Linux, it's a little bit different. You have to do the calibration on your own. So either you use Camera Plus for that, or the built-in camera. You have to adjust the position of your real-world camera with that third-person camera that you enabled in Beat Saber. You have to do that on your own. So my setup...
You could also calibrate with Liv and get the values out of the config, right?
That's tricky.
One-to-one?
It's tricky because if you do the calibration, let's say on Windows first, you would have also to make sure that your VR calibration is the same. And Steam VR, when you calibrate that, it's not the same. You might get close, but it's not the same. So you cannot transfer or even backup, I think, your current calibration of your room setup. So I was looking for that, but that's tricky. So let's get back to the to the mixed reality setup there. So my setup is I have a gaming notebook because I was struggling with performance in the beginning, and so I went for a 2 PC solution for streaming, one for gaming, the other one for streaming, and they are connected over Ethernet with the OBS NDI plugin. which works pretty solid. So there are no issues. It works on all major platforms like Windows, Linux, and Mac, and you can even do that cross-platform. So just one instance is transmitting the image you composite on your gaming PC, is transmitting that to your streaming PC, and that is doing the streaming then. So you can, for example, offload browser overlays. If you want to have chat, etc., you don't have to do that on your gaming PC. You can offload that to your streaming PC, and because sometimes the rendering of browser overlays can take some CPU, and if you can offload that, that might help with performance. I think now my gaming notebook is beefy enough to be able to handle that, but as I have that set up already from the beginning, I keep that doing. Also, it totally can happen that your SteamVR instance crashes and it might tear down OBS as well, but you would be still live because the other PC is streaming, so you can reconnect after that. And my room setup is like I have a big green cloth that I put on the wall, and I put there some clamps on different things so it will cover the wall. That's like 3 to 2 meters big thing. So I set up that. I have a green carpet that I put on the floor, and then I have a C922 to get me, to capture me. And now the thing is, you have to align the sabers with your controllers. And that's what Liv is doing for you with the calibration setup, and you have to do that on Linux on your own. But there's a config file for Camera Plus, which will offer you
extra impressive.
Say again, please.
So, which makes it extra impressive that you can actually achieve that without the easy mode tools.
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky, but I have done this now more than once, so you are getting used to that. And once it's done, it's pretty fail-safe. So sometimes it happened that Liv put out an update and then it didn't work, and people were struggling to get the stream set up. With the Camera Plus thing, you would be independent of that, just as an option. Also, the good thing is the values you figured out with Camera Plus, those you can put one-to-one into the Beat Saber configuration as well, and that works. So even if bots wouldn't work anymore, you would be able to kind of get that mixed reality setup. And to get those values, that's now the real tricky thing. The good thing is, though, that Camera Plus is re-evaluating the config file every time it saves. So you can do that on the fly. And if you are 2 people, it's easier, of course. If you are just 1, make sure you, the first thing you want to do is get the 0 position of your camera. So you hold your controller right in front of the camera, and then you adjust the values. So the controller is in the middle of the camera and right in front of it. That's the first thing. You need to find the position of the camera. And then you need to adjust the field of view and the angles. And then you put your 2 controllers somewhere in the room, maybe hang them up or put them on a chair or something like that. And then you fiddle around with those values until it fits. It can take quite a while. It is easier if you have a second person who is holding the controllers for you. Maybe that's somebody who has strong shoulders, because he will have to hold the controllers up all the time and move them around. And if you need like 15 or 20 minutes to do that, maybe if you have somebody who's fit, that will help as well. Yeah, and after that, that calibration is done. Do a backup of that file, and then you can overlay your camera with the Beat Saber scene, and you have something that's looking like mixed reality.
Something I thought of while you were explaining all of that, something that I don't think a lot of people really consider, because most of us have green screens, right? They're green, super green, very, very green. But you can actually do mixed reality compositing with any color.
Yeah.
It's just green is preferred because it's basically opposite the spectrum of skin color. So, our kind of like yellow and pink and darker colors and just skin colors in general contrast on green. So it's more difficult using like a pink screen, for example, or sometimes you run into issues with blue because of eye colors. Or like if you're watching the VOD, like this color blue on my chair here or this color green are most commonly used for compositing.
Indeed. You don't have to use the chroma green that is now kind of established. I think it was even blue before. Wasn't there blue boxes for television and stuff? And later they
Yes.
switched to green screen because blue is sometimes
believe
used
so.
on what people wear, but people barely wear green stuff. It's mostly that they wear blue jeans, for example.
True.
So that was, I think, also a reason. But I didn't know that it's the opposite color of skin.
It's not the opposite color of skin. It's just a contrasting
Oh,
color.
contrast. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
the
right on.
opposite- Well, it really depends on what your skin color is as to what the opposite of that would be.
I
I'm
think
sorry.
At this
Yeah.
point we should also mention
Sorry,
that there's-
that was not intended. But yeah,
we mentioned other colors for green screen. We should also mention that there's the Kinect as well to get mixed
Oh, yeah,
reality
sure.
working.
oh yeah, you can do
well as
with a depth
the-
cam. You need a depth cam, and the
Yeah.
Kinect is a depth cam. That's
I believe
available
some of
as
the
well.
newer technology on the iPhones is using LiDAR.
Hmm.
It's a.
I couldn't describe to you exactly what LiDAR is, but it's some kind of radio signal, as far as I understand it, that blasts out and then they sense it back, and like they can.
Isn't
I
that
saw an
just-
article. Oh, go ahead.
It's just infrared laser strobing,
LiDAR?
and they pulse the laser, and then they calculate the incoming pulse. Like I'm not quite certain on it. I
Yeah,
read up
I
a
would have to
little
do
bit.
some research too.
I think the Kinect V1 was doing basically the easiest way is to say is a big QR code they project on the space, and with that they can recalculate the depth. But the
Really?
second version already did strobing or pulsing the light and calculating the position to that. But
Hmm.
I'm not quite certain, so maybe we should stop on the LiDAR thing.
Yeah, well,
Something to do some research into, of course.
yeah, and it's something good to know. I think Liv can do that. Liv has a possibility, and they have shown that already. Like, there's a YouTube video here without green screen, mixed reality without green screen. So that's pretty impressive to see, and you don't have to use that. But you don't have to use a green screen. You can get without a green screen the same effect as well.
NVIDIA actually has software that's currently in beta called they're broadcasting something. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but they have AI AI
RTX green
background
screen.
removal.
Ooh.
Yeah, that part
mhm.
of it's called RTX green screen, but
Ah.
you have to apply for their beta and be accepted into their developer program in order to get access to it. And I don't know anyone that has access to that personally, but the technology looks amazing. It uses the tensor cores on RTX cards, very much like RTX voice does for what you're currently hearing off of my microphone. So it's actually removing, like, if I was to type on my keyboard, you wouldn't really be able to hear it unless I was speaking. So like if I could keep speaking right now, you could probably hear it,
Yeah.
but now you can't.
Yeah.
If I'm not speaking. And that's using the artificial intelligence cores that are in RTX cards. So it can do that for video processing, to do lots of different really cool effects. And I think we're going to see a lot of streamers start using that technology more and more also because they're making it available. It's RTX broadcast tools, I believe it's called.
Oh, that's cool. Good to know. I didn't hear about that. I know about RTX voice, but
It should be available
I
to you in
mean,
Linux also, if I'm not mistaken.
RTX voice isn't yet, but there are other solutions.
The
There are.
broadcasting tools, I mean.
Oh, okay. I will have to look
Yeah,
into that.
I
That's
think,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, right on. But I think that will conclude our first official FeVR Dreams podcast for today. If you have more questions, put them into the Discord. We will address them for the next stream, for the next cast, I mean. And yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks for listening. See you all in 2 weeks, or listen to you in 2 weeks again. And thanks, Krayn. Thanks, Onion. Have a good one, and
No, you.
bye-bye.
Bye.